Now students, once we understood freedom and equality, let us understand other political concepts. The next political concept that we are going to understand is the social justice. Yes. So, now first and foremost, we'll understand what is social justice. Social justice and fairness. Now, social justice, it advocates, right, or supports the fair distribution of resources, opportunities, and privileges. Resources, opportunities, and privileges, which means everyone should have equal access to resources, opportunities, and privileges, which means it ensures that every individual can progress, can thrive. Doesn't matter which social or economic background or ethnicity he comes from. Every individual should thrive, and for every individual to thrive, he should have access to opportunities, privileges, and resources. So, social justice, right, it seeks to eliminate inequalities. Now, if I talk about inequalities, the inequalities in society, right, they have arisen from historical factors, right, in history because of caste system, then because of economic factors, right, the policies favoring the rich and not favoring the poor, and the political factors like, for example, not providing reservation to a particular group. That's the reason the inequalities, right, they arose, and to address the inequalities, we are focusing on the concept of social justice where every individual is given equal access. There's fair distribution of resources, opportunities, and privileges. I hope you understood the concept of social justice. Now, what is the difference between equality versus equity? Equality ensures equal treatment. Doesn't matter which social or economic background he comes from. Equality means equal treatment. But social justice, right? Social justice, it focuses on equity. It focuses on equity, which means here social justice, it addresses specific needs. For example, not every group is equal. So the groups which are not equal, here social justice, this concept of social justice will uplift this people or this category of people who are socially and economically backward. Let's say by providing reservation. Affirmative action is nothing but reservation, or let's say uh, initiating schemes meant for the welfare of that particular group. Let's say in India we have the tribal group, the Dalits, the women. Equality doesn't matter which background you come from, we will treat you equally. Equity says no, not every group is equal. There have been some historical factors which has led to inequality in the society. Now, through reservation, through schemes, we'll try to bridge the gap. We will try to bridge the gap. This is the difference between equality and equity. Example of equity is reservation, or let's say schemes meant for the welfare of the Dalits, or let's say the tribal communities. Now, human dignity and inclusion. Talking about social justice. Now, see, social justice, it ensures that every individual, especially the disadvantaged people, the Dalits, the tribal people, right? They have access to basic rights like education, healthcare. These are the basic rights. Then employment, which means a just society. An ideal society, it values this society. An ideal society values inclusivity and diversity. A just society respects human dignity. It values human dignity. It ensures that no one is excluded from the overall development. People are not discriminated. A just society will ensure people are not discriminated on the basis of color, gender, any kind of disability, or let's say poor economic background. Now talking about redistribution of resources. Now, social justice also involves redistributing wealth and power. For example, because of the policies of the British, right, many people lost their land. Now, post independence, right, post independence, the land reforms. The purpose of the land was to take the excess lands with the zamindars, or let's say people who had more land. The government will take away the excess lands. For example, every state had this limitation, which means no person beyond this limit can uh, control a land, can own a land. If you have land, let's say for example, a state has made a law stating that no one can own a land more than 50 acres. So if anyone has 100 acres, that extra 50 acres has to be given to the state. Now state will use this land and give it to landless people. This is what we understand by redistribution of wealth and power. Redistributing land, redistributing wealth, redistributing power. For example, the rich people are levied more taxes. This is referred to as progressive taxation. So, for example, if you buy a car, fancy car, the taxes are high. Why? Because the government using these high taxes, they use this money for the welfare of the poor people. Unfortunately, the government does not do so, or the implementation is very poor. But this is what we understand by the concept of progressive taxation, where the government takes money from the rich and uses this money for the welfare of the poor people. What is the goal? To reduce the income disparities and ensure everyone is progressing or benefiting from the government policies. Then next is participation and political rights. How social justice is linked to participation and political rights. As I told you, a just society, an ideal society is the one that encourages active participation in decision making process, which means every citizen should be involved in the decision making process. Everyone should have a voice. How can a citizen participate in decision making? Voting. Then freedom of speech and expression. You can criticize the government policies. You can talk about the benefits, then the gaps in the government policies. You can engage yourself in a political debate. This is how you enrich yourself, by participating in the political process. Next, social justice addressing discrimination and historical injustices. Now, systematic discrimination on the basis of religion, caste, color. Unfortunately, it continues to be a major challenge even to this date. And here the social justice, it seeks or it aims to break this intergenerational gap or intergenerational cycles. How? Let's say, for example, if a poor person, his children will be poor, his children will be poor. Social justice is trying to, address the discrimination, right? So that how? By providing access to resources like education, healthcare, employment. So let's say, for example, if a poor person's child gets access to education, he can learn. Through education he can get a good job, and this is how he breaks this generational or intergenerational cycle of poverty. This is how he ends or he escapes poverty. The next, global social justice. What is global social justice? Now see, the principle of social justice, it extends beyond national borders. It is not only confined to the national borders, it extends beyond it. How? By addressing global issues, like by addressing like poverty. Then we have refugee rights. The refugees, citizens of one country living in other countries. And then economic inequality between nations, for example, India and let's say Bangladesh. And to address this, international cooperation is very, very important to ensure that the principle of social justice, right, is implemented across the world, not just one country. Why? Because the concept, it extends beyond national borders. So global issues like poverty, refugee problems, economic inequality, right? These issues have also, or these issues need to be addressed. How? Through international cooperation. Next, solidarity, social justice. Now, social justice is, it is deeply rooted in solidarity. It recognizes that the well-being of individuals is interconnected. The societal progress, right? The progress of the society, it requires collective efforts. Now, only through collective efforts we can uplift the marginalized groups, the Dalits, the tribal people, and thus we can create a culture where care and responsibility becomes the foundation of a society. So, social justice is rooted in solidarity, right? Then, talking about the role of social movements. Now, this is very important. For example, we have seen many movements in the past, the civil rights movement, the LGBTQ community. Now, these movements like the civil rights movement and the LGBTQ, they support, they advocate, right? Or they have been fighting, or they have been challenging inequalities so that they can promote justice. To civil rights movement, they fight for the civil rights, freedom of speech, expression, right? So, or LGBTQ, now they fight that, or their purpose behind these movements is to challenge the inequalities. Why? Because the LGBTQ are not given the same rights as other people are given. LGBTQ, that is the lesbians, gay, bisexual, transgenders, they have been challenging inequalities, and by challenging they have been promoting justice. Now these efforts, if efforts by the civil rights movement, the LGBTQ community, these efforts continue to make significant changes in the society. Next, empowerment and systemic change, right? Now see, social justice goes beyond economic equality. It empowers individuals with dignity, that is respect. And to do this, it requires changing the societal norms. Societal norms that perpetuate inequality. For example, the caste system, right? So, in order to ensure that people are living with dignity, the state has to ensure access to essential rights, which means every person, irrespective of his caste or religion, should have access to, or he should get the benefits of rights like healthcare, education, decent work, and housing. So, social justice goes beyond economic equality. It is important that the individuals should live with dignity, and the state has to ensure that people are living with dignity by ensuring every individual has access to basic rights. I hope you understood the basic concept of social justice. Next is, how do we address and fight marginalization? First and foremost, we'll understand what is marginalization. So, yes, what is marginalization? It refers, or it is the exclusion of certain groups like the Dalits, the tribals, the women. Now, these people are excluded from participating in the social life, economic life, political life, which means they do not have access to education, healthcare, employment, and thus reason they remain marginalized or backward. Right? So, in our country, groups like Dalits, women, they suffer from this problem of marginalization, which means they are marginalized, right? Historically, they were marginalized, and now here we need to address this marginalization and ensure people are not excluded. This is what is marginalization. Now, how do you address marginalization? For example, we have the governments, we have the civil societies, then individuals like us. We must actually work together. How? The government should focus on reservations, affirmative action, that is reservation. The civil society should spread awareness that people should not be discriminated. For example, intercaste system is still considered a taboo in our country. People do not promote intercaste marriages. Why? Because let's say marriage happening between upper caste and lower caste is still not possible. Even if the couples marry, they're boycotted from the society. The families don't talk to the couple. So civil society has to ensure that discrimination on the basis of caste or religion should be strictly prohibited. Next, now how do you empower the group? For example, we have social activism, spreading awareness, political representation, giving seats for the marginalized groups, Dalits, women, tribal community, legal reforms, ensuring that the marginalized people have access to the judiciary. In case injustice happens to them, they can knock the doors of the judiciary. For that, we have the constitutional and legal safeguards. The Indian Constitution, right? It ensures that equality. Every person is equal. It will ensure that equality principle is applied or implemented in our country, right? How? For example, Article 14, we have right to equality. Then rule of law. Now, this principle of rule of law, this principle of rule of law, right? It ensures equal treatment, which means arbitrary actions are prevented. Then we have the Indian Penal Code, which is replaced by the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. We have constitutional safeguards, and when we have laws, that is uh, acts made by the parliament that promote social justice. For example, we have Article 14 to 18 that promotes constitutional safeguard, that promotes equality, right to equality, which means it prohibits discrimination based on caste, religion, sex, or place of birth. Now, unfortunately, despite the legal protections, now legal protection law, that is the SC and ST Act. So, discrimination, if anyone discriminates against the SCs and STs, a strict punishment is prescribed in the law. Domestic Violence Act, if a woman is being domestically abused, then the husband will be or will receive a harsh punishment. Now, despite legal protections like these laws or the constitutional safeguards, discrimination still persists in our country because the mindset, there is no mechanism to change the mindset except education, So it is very important to ensure that the marginalized groups can access legal remedies, and to ensure that they can seek the help of judiciary. Legal literacy is important, which means they should know the rights that they enjoy and how they can approach the judiciary in case they do not, or they are being met with injustice, or injustice is happening with them. You need to know the legal procedure. There has to be legal awareness camps through which legal literacy be given to the marginalized groups, so that these people understand their legal rights, so that it can help them to seek justice and punish the perpetrators. Next, role of education and awareness. Here, the importance of education comes into picture. Only through education we can change the mindset. For example, the orthodox people who still believe in the concept of, let's say, religion, caste, this barrier can be broken only through scientific education. Every person is the same. It is a society who has divided the people uh, with caste, religion, ethnicity, etc., etc. So only through education we can change this mindset, and we should believe in the principle of equality. Only then we can address and confront, fight against marginalization. Now we'll understand the role of judiciary. How judiciary can help in promoting social justice. For example, judiciary, the Supreme Court and the High Courts, they can play a very important role by upholding social justice. How? They can ensure that the laws are interpreted, the laws are implemented in letter and spirit. In case the laws are not implemented, or for example, people, there is indiscrimination, they can take the case, or they can take the case suo motu case and address this challenge. Anyone who is perpetuating inequality, discrimination, the Supreme Court has a power to punish the person. Then, public interest litigation. This is another important tool that allows individuals and groups to seek justice. Right? For example, I am an individual person, my rights are not getting affected, but I see that there is a group, they are being discriminated. Now, me, on that group's behalf, I can file a case on behalf of that group. This is the importance of public interest litigation. It's not necessary for my rights to be affected, only then I can approach the judiciary. No, I can fight the case on behalf of any person or any group. Then, striking down unjust laws. If the judiciary feels that the laws made by the parliament or Vidhan Sabha, they go against the rights of people, then they can nullify the laws. The laws that violate social justice principles. For example, uh, in our country, the lesbians, the gays did not have the right. They did not have the rights, which means their existence was not recognized by the laws of our country. Finally, the Supreme Court, right, gave this community the right to exist with dignity, which means the Supreme Court believed that the laws that we have in our country are violating the rights of the LGBTQ community, that is lesbians, gays, bisexual, transgender group. And so it struck down the restriction that actually came in the way of the LGBTQ community. And then finally, ensuring constitutional commitment, that is the judiciary can ensure that all the laws parliament makes or the judicial provisions are in alignment with values such as equality, dignity, justice. So all the laws made by the parliament or the constitutional provisions should be in sync with values such as equality, dignity, justice. So this is about social justice. I hope you understood this topic on social justice. Now, let us focus on another topic, and that is rights. Now, what are rights? First and foremost, what are rights? Rights are nothing but they are claims. Claims, or in Hindi we call it hak. They are essential claims. They are not only simple claims, they are essential claims that allows individuals to live with dignity. These rights allow individuals to live with dignity, and this rights should also help a person to should help a person in his development. This right should actually enhance the life of a person. And these rights, we'll discuss the different types of rights. Now these rights, they apply not only to political and civic life, but they're also applicable to the social, economic, personal spheres. These rights are also extended to children, the unborn child, and even the animals. So these rights are not only confined to civic and political rights, it extends much beyond it. Even the unborn child has a right. And the importance of rights is that, or it provides the foundation for a just society. It's a foundation. The rights are the foundations of just society. Just society. A society that values and that respects rights. It ensures that people can live with dignity and make choices, and this contributes positively in every individual's life. The rights, they have to be justified. They have to be justified, which means a right is a legitimate claim. A right is a legitimate claim, that is, it should be recognized by the society. For example, right to livelihood. This ensures economic independence. Now, this right is recognized by the society. The right to free expression. This free expression allows me to express my wishes, my opinion, and this leads to creativity and participation. Then talking about right to education, it helps in decision making. Only once I'm educated, I can understand the difference between what is good and what is bad. So, the right should be justified, recognized by the society, which means the laws and the constitution should recognize the rights. That's the reason we have a list of rights in our constitution. Next, not all desires are right. Desires. Now, a claim, we discuss a claim is legitimate only it is recognized by the society. Now, for example, harmful activities like smoking or dealing in drugs, these cannot be considered rights. These cannot be considered rights, which means rights are those which are accepted by the society or the laws of the constitution. Right? So, your desires cannot be rights, because rights are legitimate only when they are recognized by the society. They are recognized by the society. Right? Now, where do rights come from? So, let us understand where do rights come from. Where do the concept of rights come from? Now see, talking about natural rights in the 17th and the 18th century, political thinkers like John Locke. Now this scholar or this political philosopher, he argued that, or he put a point that rights come from nature or God. For the people who believe in God, rights come from God, and people who do not believe in God, rights come from nature. Which means, and which are the rights? Life, right to live, having liberty, right? Then having property. Now, John Locke says that right to live, liberty, expression, these are inalienable rights. These cannot be taken away by any authority. This cannot be taken away by any authority. This is what John Locke says, and these rights are important for individual freedom. Now we'll discuss what are human rights. Now today, human rights have replaced the concept of natural rights. These human rights are based on the belief that every human being deserves certain basic rights. And which are basic rights? We know education, healthcare, employment, right to live with dignity. And these rights, they challenge the discrimination on the basis of caste, religion, ethnicity. Then what are universal declaration of human rights? Now the United Nations. The United Nations has come up with the concept of a universal declaration of human rights, which means they believe that all individuals deserve rights. And the state, the government should uphold the dignity and respect, which means living a life without dignity and respect is living no life. So there has to be a right to live with dignity, respect, and there has to be global recognition of these basic rights, these fundamental freedoms. This is Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which means United Nations, which the government of the entire countries also acknowledges that every individual should enjoy basic, that is common rights. This is this is the concept of rights and its origin. Now we'll understand legal rights. Legal rights. Role of legal rights. Now legal rights, they ensure that human rights are upheld by law, which means the law is acknowledging or respecting, right, or it recognizes human rights. For example, for the first time, the rights the rights were codified under Bill of Rights in America. Now in America, Bill of Rights, it consists of all the rights that the American people enjoy. In India, we have the concept of fundamental rights in our Indian Constitution, which is Article 12 to Article 35. Now these rights are a list of rights that the Indian citizens enjoy, and these rights do not discriminate people on the basis of religion or caste. Now, in order to enforce these rights, states' role become very, very important. Legal rights, they require the state to take action to protect individuals. For example, a right to equality. The state ensures that people have this, or people enjoy these rights, and people of a country are not discriminated on the basis of caste. Then abolition of untouchability. It is the duty of the state to ensure that the ancient practice of untouchability is not practiced in our country. Article 25 to 28, it uh, protects the right of freedom of religion. Every individual has the right to respect or follow his faith or his religion. It is the duty of the state to ensure that the rights mentioned in the constitution are implemented, practiced in letter and spirit. Then restrictions on state power, which means even the state is not allowed to violate the rights of people. In case the state takes away the rights of people by making a law, then we can approach the judiciary. The judiciary will ensure that the law is struck down, it is nullified. Now students will understand the kinds of rights, which are the types of rights. Now rights can be categorized in various types. For example, we have political rights, we have economic rights, and we have cultural rights. What are political rights? These rights ensure that citizens can participate in the political process. For example, right to vote. Right to vote is a political right. Then to, let's say, to form a political party, to form or join a political party is your political right. Then the right to contest elections. You can also contest the elections. You can contest the election. These are your political rights. And political rights are fundamental for a functioning democracy. Democracy cannot function without political rights. Why? Because it gives the power in the hands of the common people. The common people will decide what is good and bad for them. This is political rights. Then we have economic rights. Now, economic rights, these rights ensure that individuals can meet their basic needs. They can meet their, or they can satisfy their ends need. For example, food, shelter, healthcare. These are the economic rights. They can meet their basic needs, right? These rights also ensure that people can live with dignity and participate fully in society. For example, in India, we like government has introduced schemes, right? Like the Manarega Act. This Manarega Act, it ensures social security in the rural population. Then we have cultural rights. Right? Now, these rights allow individuals or rather groups to express and preserve their culture. For example, in India, Article 29 and 30, or let's say 25 to 30, it allows the religious minorities, the Muslim, Sikh, Christian, also the linguistic minorities, which means the religious minorities, the linguistic minorities can preserve their culture, that is, their language, their script, their art form. These are cultural rights. I hope you understood what are cultural rights. Now, very important to understand the responsibilities of citizens. We understood the rights that we enjoy. What about the responsibilities? The collective responsibility. Now, rights are not just personal entitlements or personal claims. They come with responsibilities, which means we are responsible towards society. They require the individuals, the groups, and the state to contribute to the collective well-being of the society, Like, for example, it is our duty to protect the environment. It is our duty to minimize the pollution. How can you protect the environment? By not using the plastic carry bags. This is how you can protect the environment. Then responsibilities also includes respecting others' rights. For example, if you can enjoy your rights, you should ensure that people are also in a position to enjoy their rights. For example, my freedom does not allow me to slap or kill other person. So here I need to respect the rights of other person as well. Then balancing the conflicting rights. Now in a society as diverse as a country, there will be conflicting rights. For example, my freedom of speech and expression may hurt a particular individual or a particular group. So rights come into conflict, and it is important to balance, or it is important to balance the rights. Right? So my freedom of speech, right? Let's say I may say something about religion. I'm an atheist person. I do not believe in the concept of God. So I'm talking bad about God. But the other person, so this is my freedom of speech and expression. Now, when I say that God does not exist, I'm trying to prove it scientifically. So the state cannot stop me from scientifically proving my point. But the people who are orthodox, believe in the concept of God, religion, they might get hurt. So here the state has to balance the conflicting rights. I hope you understood the concept of rights. Right? Now students will understand another topic, and the name of the next topic is citizenship. Now, first and foremost, what is citizenship? What is the meaning of citizenship? Which means that you are a full an equal member. You are an equal member in a political community. Equal member. Which means that citizenship guarantees that all individuals, doesn't matter what your background is, they enjoy equal rights. They enjoy equal rights. Now, citizenship, if we look at this concept of citizenship, it is more than just legal status. Why? Because it also comes with rights and responsibilities. Which rights? Freedom to move from one place to another, or let's say access to opportunities. Which means being a citizen of one country allows me the rights that my country, that my constitution gives me. Now, which are the benefits that accrue out of enjoying citizenship of a particular country? Now, citizens enjoy political rights. For example, a citizen, let's say, I can enjoy political rights, right? We discuss right to vote, form political party, contest elections, but a foreigner cannot have the same right. And then I also have access to social and economic rights like access to education and healthcare. It also ensures that protection and assistance is given to the citizens, especially when living or let's say traveling abroad. So these are the rights and benefits that the citizens enjoy. For example, when it comes to public employment, the citizens are given preference. When it comes to reservation, the citizens get the benefits of reservation. But if I talk about the stateless people who are not citizen of any country, there are millions of people like this. And they are referred to as refugees. For example, uh, the Muslims of Myanmar are not given citizenship by their state. The Myanmar refuses to give citizenship to the Muslim population of their country. So the Muslims migrate to Bangladesh and India. So they are living as refugees. They are neither the residents or citizens of India, Bangladesh, nor Myanmar. They are referred to as refugees, or rather illegal migrants. Now, these people actually understand the importance of citizenship. We people do not appreciate or understand the importance of having a citizenship of developing and prosperous country like India. And if people do not enjoy legal status, citizenship, they also do not get access to basic rights. Which basic rights? For example, education, healthcare. And these people actually live in a very difficult, precarious conditions. For example, they do not have healthcare services, no education, nothing. Look at the people of Palestinians. The Palestinians, like majority of the Palestinian population is displaced. They live in some, they are living as refugees in the neighboring countries. Then if I talk about the historical struggle for citizenship. Now, many rights which are associated with citizenship, right? These rights were won through how? People fought against monarchies. People fought against monarchies, that is, the presence of a king ruling the entire state, and colonial powers like the British controlling India. And then if I talk about the historical struggle, we have the French, or let's say the American Revolution, or let's say the Indian struggle for independence. Right now, these struggles have actually led to people enjoying freedom or people enjoying rights. Then, still, this struggle has not ended. This struggle is still ongoing, which means there is continuing movements for equal citizenship. Now, in India, for example, the Dalits are still fighting for their rights. The women, they are still fighting for their rights, which means they are actually fighting for equal opportunities and justice. Next is debate. Next is debate on freedom of movement. Now, while citizens have the right to move and work anywhere, freedom of movement, they have the right to move and work anywhere. The tensions arise when the local population feel that the outsiders are taking jobs. Outsiders here, I do not mean people from other countries. No, outsiders, which means, let's say for example, in the 60s and 70s and still to this date, people in Maharashtra feel that people from Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Bihar are taking away the jobs of local people, are taking away the jobs of local people. This is what the people think, right?
We close the door.
Then if I talk about conflicts or migration, migration is another very important and global issue. Now there has been resistance against migrants coming from other countries, from for example Bangladesh, Pakistan, then Myanmar, and these resistance against migration has at times led to violence, conflict, right? So, and this migration can be interstate or in, or let's say country to country. But the constitution of a country protects the people who are migrating from one state to other state. For example, the poor migrants, right? Or let's say the skilled people from poor states, they migrate to other states. For example, the poor people from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, they migrate to prosperous states like Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu. The educated people from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, they move to, let's say, economic hubs like Mumbai, Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore, and then people of their states, they feel threatened by the migration coming from other states. This is another challenge. Right to protest, which means now if you're a citizen of a country, it includes a right to challenge the government policies. How? The citizens have the right to carry out protest. They can be a part of media, and through legal means they can fight against the government policies. And if I discuss the challenges faced by the urban poor, for example, the slum dwellers, they contribute significantly to the economy. Why? Because they are a part of informal workforce, but they face very poor living conditions and marginalization. Right now, policies such as national policy on urban street vendors. There have been policies meant for bettering, improving the lives of urban people who live in the slums, but still, it's a long race to walk. Then if I talk about rights of marginalized groups, now the tribal communities, or let's say people who live in the forest, they face displacement. Why? Because let's say there is a mining project, so people are displaced. There's a power project, displaced, power company, mining companies. So here the government must balance the protection of these people with, alongside ensuring that the country is growing. So this is the basic information of citizenship. Now let us understand the link between citizenship and nation. Now, what so we'll understand the origins of the nation state. Origins of the nation state. Now, the modern nation states that emerged through the revolutionary movement, especially post the French Revolution. Right now, these nation states, they focused on sovereignty and democratic rights. Origin of nation states. the French Revolution, the Indian struggle for independence. They emphasized on sovereignty, which means control over their territory, controlling over their territory and ruling the country, territory through democratic rights. And so this is how the concept of nation state emerged, and people who were part of that nation were given citizenship, which means citizenship is not just legal status. It involves shared culture, history. For example, people who are part of this country have been living since centuries. So people who are living in this country, they have shared culture, history, national identity, and this identity is often symbolized by flags, anthems, languages. This is part of our cultural heritage. It's not just a legal status. Here, people who have been living in this country, their ancestors have been living since centuries and they have a shared culture. Now, inclusivity and challenges. The democratic states, which is a modern concept, it aims for inclusive national identities, which means people who are part of this country should abide by the common laws. For example, whichever laws the parliament makes, people of this country are expected to abide by those laws. For example, now every modern country has the principle of secularism, that is, respecting all the faiths. But the immigrant people who have come from other countries, like let's say the Muslims, they do not abide by the policies the country France makes. For example, in France, wearing a headscarf or let's say turbans goes against their policy of secularism. But people of other countries who are now French citizens, they face difficulties, which means they face difficulties in assimilation. If I talk about criteria for citizenship, now different countries use various criteria. For example, in Germany, the Turkish migrant workers' children have long struggled for citizenship rights in Germany. Or let's say Israel grants citizenship based on only Jewish heritage. But India's concept is different. India's concept is inclusive and let's say follows secular model, which means we grant citizenship not on the basis of religion or caste. So there are certain criteria. For example, a person if is connected to India, let's say his parents or let's say grandparents were linked to India, or if a person is not linked to in India, a person is not linked to India by any means, even that person can be given citizenship. And this citizenship does not discriminate on the basis of religion or caste. And for that, we have constitutional protection, which means the Indian constitution guarantees that the state will not discriminate. While giving citizenship, the state will not discriminate. Now we'll discuss the concept of universal citizenship. What is universal citizenship? The first one is statelessness and migration. Now, millions of people worldwide, they live without a national identity. They do not have a national identity. Why? Because they their country does not recognize their national identity or provides them citizenship. Why? Let's say because of war, persecution, or let's say famine. Now, let's say because of war and persecution, the Muslims in Myanmar are not given citizenship. And so these people, they face barriers, which means these people, their children do not have access to work, education, healthcare, property ownership, nothing. They are stateless. Then restricted citizenship policies. Now every country has the right to frame their own criteria policies. For example, India does not give citizenship to the migrants. India does not, majority of the countries do not give citizenship to the migrants. This is the policy that every country frames. Why? Because let's say if you allow migrants to be a part of your country, that can change the demography. For example, it is believed that the demography, the population composition of West Bengal and Assam has changed over the years. Why? Because of the infiltration of people from Bangladesh. It has changed the population dynamics. Next is democratic challenges. Now, the stateless individuals, they are people who do not have any rights or any recognition. And this actually highlights the limitation of national, it highlights the limitation of national national citizenship. If I talk about the role of global organizations like the United Nations and other agencies, now these organizations, they provide aid, help to the refugees, but long-term solutions remain difficult. Temporary help will not solve their problems. Then what if we discuss the idea of global citizenship? What is this idea of global citizenship? Now some people say that, or they support the idea of universal identity, which means this identity should not be tied to any boundary. Doesn't matter which country a person is coming from, he should enjoy basic rights and protection. Basic rights and protection. This is the concept of universal citizenship. Now, this global citizenship, right, it recognizes shared responsibilities, which means responsibilities with respect to climate change and migration. It emphasizes collective action by all the countries, and this collective action should go beyond national boundaries. This is the concept of global citizenship, where a person's identity should not be confined by any, let's say, territorial borders. Even if a person is helpless, stateless, refugee, the global community should help him grant access. This is the concept of citizenship. I hope you have understood the concept of citizenship. Now, students, let us understand the concept of nationalism. What is nationalism? Because nationalism, the debate surrounding nationalism is often transcend almost each and every country. So let us try to understand the concept of nationalism and how it impacts or affects the identity of people living in that country. First and foremost, what is nationalism? Definition of nationalism. Now it's a political ideology, and this political ideology, nationalism, it shapes the identities of people, the politics, and also the historical events. This concept of nationalism has contributed to both integration, integration as well as disintegration of nation state. This concept of nationalism, it brought the regions together, like it happened in the case of India, where the princely states were merged, or disintegration, the Soviet Union was disintegrated. So how the concept of nationalism affects identity? It affects identity and, let's say, politics. How it affects? For example, before independence, right, India had diverse linguistic, religious, and cultural groups. Now, this diverse language, religion, and culture, all these things, this diversity was united under the common goal of freedom from the British rule. This common goal actually helped forge a national identity despite the regional differences. Despite the differences we had, this common goal brought our country together, and this led to the formation of a country called India. Identity. How it impacts politics? For example, the British nationalism. The nationalism in Britain, it played a key role, and that's the reason that led to UK's decision to leave the European Union. UK is no more part of European Union. Why? Because many citizens in UK felt that EU, the presence of EU or the presence of UK in EU was actually threatening the national sovereignty of UK. So this is how nationalism affects identity as well as politics. Now nationalism, symbolism and patriotism. This nationalism is often expressed through patriotic symbols like we have the flags, the national celebrations such as Independence Day, Republic Day. This showcases India's unity and diversity. What? The flags and national celebrations. Talking about the historical role, nationalism has unified smaller states. For example, as it happened in the case of Germany and Italy in the 19th century. So it brought the smaller regions together, and it also led to breakup of big empires. For example, Russia, Soviet Union was disintegrated. 15 new states emerged. This you will study in world history. Or let's say the Austria-Hungary Empire, which broke up in many regions or countries. Decolonization and independence movement. Now, nationalism played a very important role. We discussed how nationalism played a role in making our country free and also bringing people from different regions together. What is this dual nature? Now, nationalism, we know it fosters solidarity and state building, but it also, so there's one positive aspect, the other negative aspect is nationalism can also fuel conflicts, separatism. For example, the Khalistanis want a separate land for the Punjabis. The northeastern group want a separate country for their tribal group. So this ideology has dual nature. One, it brings people together. It can also lead to separatism. Now we'll understand the concept of nation and nationalism. Nation and nationalism, do they mean the same? Let's try to understand the distinct identity of a nation. Now, nation is different from other social groups. Nation is different from other social groups like the families or let's say the tribes. So, nation is different from other social groups. Nation is based on shared beliefs and aspirations. Shared beliefs and aspirations. Shared beliefs and aspirations and a collective identity rather than direct personal relationship. In family, we have the personal relationship, but when it comes to nation, it has a collective identity. Then formation, how does this national identity get formed or formation? It is shaped by the historical memories from the ancient to the modern, the shared territories, for example, the territories occupied by the ancient kings. This is how national identities form. Diversity within nations. Now, a nation is not defined by a single factor like language, ethnicity, or religion. Now, there are some countries that is defined, or let's say defined by only one factor, but countries like India has multiple languages and religions, but still remains a single nation. Diversity within nations. And then belief as a foundation of nation. For example, a nation exists when its members believe that they belong together and share a common identity. And which is this common identity? For example, India is a civilization state. People who have been living on this land, India, share the same culture, heritage, language, customs, traditions. They have a common identity. That's the reason India is referred to as a civilizational state. From the modern prism, we refer India as a nation country. But India historically has always been a civilization state. And then there is unity through a shared vision. The bond among people is not based on just physical traits like territory, but a collective vision for the future that unity. Unity is something that binds people together. Now, let us try to understand the role of history and territory in nationalism. Role of history and territory. The historical identity of nations. Now, nations, they see themselves as having a continuous historical identity, which means they often trace their roots to ancient civilizations and cultural achievements. For example, the Harappan civilization, the Gupta Empire, the Mauryan Empire. We actually trace our roots to the ancient civilization and all the cultural achievements that our country has made, be it the Nalanda University, achievements in the field of science, technology, engineering. Then use of history in nationalism. Nationalist movements, they invoke cultural heritage. For example, during our struggle against independence, we invoked cultural heritage and historical unity. For example, during our freedom, Jawaharlal Nehru, he emphasized India's unity despite its diversity. India historically has remained united. This, we use history to foster nationalism, to bring people together. Then territory. If I talk about territory, a nation typically claims a specific homeland, which is viewed as a, for example, Hinduism, or let's say the culture, the indigenous culture. Now this Hinduism, or let's say the culture, right? This way of life, or let's say religion, right? This land was the birthplace for the culture or for the religion, or let's say for the culture. So nation typically claims a specific homeland, which is viewed as the birthplace or rightful place of the people. That's the reason we say that this land is for Hindus. That doesn't mean that this land does not belong to other religion, but Hinduism and our culture was born on this land. Then symbolism of homeland. The homeland India, or the civilizational state, it represents the origin, which dates back to thousands of years history and pride, and this actually strengthens national unity. And talking about territorial disputes, for example, the dispute that we have with Pakistan. Now, claims over land are often contested. Now, India has Kashmir as a territorial dispute. Also, we have dispute in, let's say, Rajasthan and Gujarat, or let's say the conflict between Israel and Palestine. For example, we see as part of the ancient civilization, Pakistan, some part of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, all these regions were part of one identity, one territory. That's the reason our identity, right, is linked to India's subcontinent, not only just to India, but the subcontinent as well. I hope you understood the role of history and territory in nationalism. Now, national self-determination, that is, every country should have the right to determine, or let's say govern themselves. Definition of national self-determination. Now the principle that nations have the right to govern themselves, to manage themselves, to control themselves. This is referred to as national self-determination. And what is its link to independence movement? This idea of national self-determination is closely associated with the struggle for independence and the formation of separate states. This that we should govern our people, our territory. For example, the tribal people in Northeast, they want to have a separate land. Why? So that they can manage or control their land. Then impact of World War, for example, the Treaty of Versailles. Treaty of Versailles. Now, post the World War I, the Treaty of Versailles was signed. This granted self-determination to many countries. For example, Europe. Europe was a land that had many frictions. So this Treaty of Versailles that was signed after World War I, it actually granted independence to many cultural and ethnic groups. And this actually redrew the European boundaries. Then if I talk about challenges in implementation. Now the process of self-determination led to mass migration because now the countries started getting formed on the basis of, let's say, language or let's say culture. This led to mass migration. This led to displacement. People were displaced from one region to other region. This led to conflicts. Why? Because of diversity. So now a land was only a land for a particular ethnic or let's say tribal group. There were challenges in implementation. Now, role in anti-colonial struggles. The concept of national self-determination was central to independence movement. For example, when we are fighting against the British, we said that Indian people should govern ourselves, and this actually became a central theme in the independence movements in the Asian and the African continent. And we are fighting for what? For dignity, for justice, and for prosperity. And what are the challenges post independence? Even after gaining independence, many states struggle to accommodate their diverse cultural and ethnic populations. For example, Pakistan. Pakistan failed to accommodate their diversity. That's the reason Pakistan was broke up. Right? It So Bangladesh emerged. Why? Because Pakistan failed to accommodate their cultural and ethnic population, or they failed to manage the diversity. That's the reason it led to formation of new state. Now India was successful. That's the reason India still remains a solid land, united land, right? Now we'll understand nationalism and pluralism. The concept of pluralism. Now traditionally, right, nationalism has been linked to homogeneous cultural identity, which means a land belonging to a specific cultural group. But the democratic societies emphasize pluralism. What is pluralism? Pluralism recognizes and values cultural diversity. Nationalism, right, traditionally belong to a specific group or community, but the democratic state, they emphasize pluralism, which means recognizing and valuing cultural diversity while maintaining national unity. India recognizes the diversity, at the same time India maintains national unity. How? By protecting the minority rights, which means Article 25 to 38 protects not only the religious minorities like Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, but it also protects the rights of linguistic minorities. But despite we have been successful in maintaining national unity, there have been instances where there were tensions. For example, Kashmir. Kashmir is fighting for a separate land. People in Northeast, or let's say the Naxal belt. So, despite the legal protection, some groups like Khalistanis, they are demanding separate statehood or a separate country. Now, if I talk about challenge for democratic states, see, now democratic state ensure equal citizenship while maintaining unity, right? This is what the democratic states aim or strive to do. But democratic states want that we should encompass people belonging to different backgrounds, But nationalism wants that people belonging to a specific group should only be a part of that line. So here you can see a bit a conflict. Why? Because democratic state, it emphasizes on inclusivity. So defining national identity in democracies, it should be based on shared political values like democracy, secularism, that is respecting all the religions, and human rights, right? Which means nationalism, it focuses on cultural or ethnic uniformity, but democracy, it focuses on democracy, secularism, and human rights, that is shared political values. I hope you understood the concept of nationalism, right? Now, students, let's try to understand the concept of secularism. Now, what do you mean by secularism? It's a doctrine, it's a principle that ensures that religion does not interfere with political and social life, right? Religion and politics are different. Religion will not come in the way of social and political life. This is what we understand by the concept of secularism. It promotes religious freedom and equality. Secularism is opposite to domination. Secularism prevents both interreligious, interreligious and intra-religious. What does it mean? That inter-religious domination is one religious group oppressing or harassing the other group. And when it comes to intra means discrimination within the religion, like discrimination in Hinduism on the basis of caste or gender. This is the difference between inter-religious domination and intra. And what is the core principle of secularism? That secularism ensures religious freedom for all individuals, which means it does not allow the state to favor any one particular religion. All the religions are equal. And goal of secularism is peaceful coexistence. Now, for countries like India, this secularism is very, very important. Why? The goal is to preserve or to ensure that there is peaceful coexistence. And what is the role of state? Role of state. Now, a state has to remain neutral, which means there is no official religion. India does not have an official religion. Separation of religion and state, which means religion and politics are separate. But Indian model is different. We'll understand. It is beyond theocracy. Theocracy, which means believing, or let's say Pakistan is a theocratic state. Why? Because Islam is the foundation of their religion. Secularism is not just about preventing religious rule, but also avoiding state alliances. State is not associated with any religion. Like the state in Pakistan is associated with Islam. In India, no. What is the Indian secularism? It involves non-interference and active engagement, which means we ensure that we are not interfering in their day-to-day life. We at times we also engage to protect the minority rights. Minority rights. For example, in India, the state can also interfere in religion. The Western model, state does not interfere. For example, let's say if any religion is following a practice that is going against human rights, or let's say a religion legitimizing child marriage, or let's say the concept of triple talaq. Now, if the state, Indian state, believes that a particular practice associated with religion, be it triple talaq or let's say sati, is violating the constitution or violating human rights, the state will intervene in the religion and abolish that practice. Like India abolished triple talaq. Like India abolished triple talaq. And India follows principled distance approach, which means we maintain neutrality and we intervene when there is some wrong practice. Now, what is the difference between Western secularism and East Indian secularism? West, there's strict separation. The state and religion does not intervene. Mutual exclusion. No matter what, the state will not intervene. It only focuses on the individual religious freedom. But in India, as we discussed, it allows the state to intervene. For example, the way India intervened in the Hindu religion practices, which led to the Hindu, let's say, Hindu civil. So here in India, our state has the freedom to intervene in the religious practices, right? Like India intervened in the Hindu religious practices and removed certain practices which were discriminatory. For example, in the year 1955, Hindu Code Bill was passed, through which men and women can inherit the equal property of their parents. This is where the state can intervene. This is what the difference is between the Indian and the Western secularism. I hope students you understood the concept of secularism and how the Indian model is different from the Western model. So this chapter is complete. We have discussed each and every concept. I hope you have understood each and every concept associated with the third chapter, that is political theories. Thank you so much for watching.